Hey, it's Joe, and I'm back again with another tutorial. This is Sims Interior Design 101. Right, so it's no surprise to some of you that I did study architecture once upon a time, and I also did interior design. With this tutorial, I'm hoping to encapsulate three things: color science, textures and patterns, and also the space and the relationship between objects and the environment they are in. These three things, when applied fairly well, will give you a fantastic interior. It will look designed as opposed to just simply slapped together. Right, so let's go on with color science. It sounds like a very fancy term for something very, very complicated, but really it's just about choosing colors that work well together, that even though it's not to your taste, it does look like it's been designed. So for the purpose of this video, I am going to stick with complementary colors. I'm not going to go into triads and all of that, but that you can look into if you really want to get that far involved. The base of the tutorial starts in a website, which will help you to choose colors and then get your complementary color so that you don't have to do too much thinking about this. You just decide which colors you like and you want to apply. Then we'll move into the interiors that I've designed around these complementary colors. Right, so this is Decor colors. I didn't choose this site for any particular reason other than it is very clean, very easy to use, self-explanatory, and it's got plenty of options. You can download this sort of software from the web, and you can use other websites. This is entirely up to you. I just particularly like this site. So here we start with a lovely orange blue combination. Now the color science is that you pick a color. So let's say I picked the blue. Okay, the complementary color for this orangey color is the blue teal. Now as you rotate, it will change the complementary colors according to what you want. So I decided to go with that teal orangey color. So the opposite color, and if you click on these little circles, you can actually switch the color to the background. So it actually gives you a good, overview of what color you're looking at. This is the first example that I'm going to be using shortly in the game. Now, one thing you should know is that you can actually adjust the intensity of these colors. Now, look what happens to the colors when you bring them in. At first, you think, oh, well, that's just sort of muddy. But look, it's really kind of a tan, grayish blue color. And you'll see what I'm talking about when you get into the game. There are other options that you can choose, but for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to stick with a complementary mode. You can do a split complementary mode and a triad. Triads are sort of most common, other option that you would choose. You pick three colors. Again, you can mute them right down, and they're still complementary. They're just very muted. So we are going to stick with this for the first example. But now imagine, and this is a complementary color, but it is very harsh. If we choose a purple and a acid green, they're both very, very vivid colors. And you'll see this is another example that I'll be using. But if you bring it in, look at that. It turns almost like a grayish color. So you can actually use this to create quite elegant interiors. Now, the thing to know is you're not going to be able to match these colors up exactly. The Sims 4 does not have a color wheel, so you cannot actually do this in the game. But this will help you to bring in two colors or three colors, or whichever way you decide, and then bring it into the game and try and match these colors as closely as possible. Right, let's go back to the game and I'll show you just what we've been looking at here. Right, so here we are. These are the colors that we chose with the orange and the blue teal color. So this is in its all glory, its full brightness. This is about as close as I could get in the game. If you see, even the carpet is very patterned and very bright and very full of oranges and the teals. So this is how, if you take it literally, how you can apply the color wheel. If you're looking for something very, very bright, then, well, this is it. Okay. The option that I would probably suggest would be this one. This is it's still colorful, but it is toned down. So you have, remember when I pulled the color wheel and the orange is sort of toned down to sort of browns and tans, and the blues also toned down to a sort of a more bluish color. So that would be colorful yet toned down. You see the carpet repeats the blues and the sort of brownish tan colors. You also notice here I've used a blue solid, block of color in the area just to highlight it. But you see I have offset the orange off the blue so that if you put a sort of brown wall behind that, it wouldn't look as good as you can see here. So if you were to put an orange couch in front of orange, the contrast is not that much. But if you want to create feature walls, then that's how you do it. So that's the sort of subtle, more classy look. And then if you really want to go understated, then this is what I would go for. This is my very conservative approach. Again, similar couch. It's a very light tan. It's still got the oranges in it. The wood has got the oranges in it. The structure of the table has got oranges in it. And then these sort of pale grey blues in the chairs, as you have here. But look at them side by side. In the wall, the feature wall, we've got the blues and sort of tan oranges in it. And it looks very, very, looks very, very subtle and very understated. So again, it depends on what look you're going for. Very, very bright, middle of the range, and then of course sort of elegant and sort of understated. And again, there's no right or wrong. This is just showing you how you take that color wheel and you apply it in a different way, from bright to not so bright. Now, remember I showed you the lovely green and purple. Well, here we go. Here's applying the green and the purple. This is a very acid green and a very sort of bubblegum purple. You see, from the lighting to the decorations, the tables, the carpets, everything is in that palette. Even this carpet actually has the palette of those particular greens. In the wall, the purples have, again, repeating the greens and also variations on the purples. So this is the very, very purple and green. Then we have something slightly more elegant. Now, what you must bear in mind is that the Sims is never going to have the exact color because we don't have color wheels in the Sims. We just have furniture and you have to choose whatever is available. Now here again, I've chosen the green as the backdrop, a sort of purplish couch to go against that, a purple lamp, as you can see, a sort of lilac, lavender, purplish rug, and then these interesting sort of green chairs. In the table as well, you'll see there are sort of greenish, purplish colors. So all in all, it gives you a cohesive theme. And again, the kind of interior I would go for would be this. You've still got that purple in little bits of highlights. You've got the greens in the tablecloth there, the two chairs. The carpet is very understated, but it's kind of like a sort of like a tannish, purplish color. And then look at the brick. I chose a variation on the other one, but it's also got sort of like the purplish tan colors in it. So that's how you create a very understated green and purple. Now, if you look at it, it's within those complementary colors. It all fits in. In fact, this couch here even has complementary colors in it. Look how Maxi has incorporated. You've got the purples and you've got the greens. And these complementary colors. So you can actually put together an interior that is complementary. Let's zoom out. And here you go. From bright to light. From the top you can actually compare. So you can see because of the limitations of the objects, I've been forced to choose different colored carpets, etc. because I could not find a green carpet that would work here. But again, you see This is the contrast between the purple and the green. They're complementary. Here you see it from the wall to the couch. Okay, and that pretty much gives us an idea of how you can use the color wheel. Right, this is the second part, and this is about textures and patterns. This will look into how you can use patterns and textures without making it overbearing or incorrect. There are certain patterns and textures that just don't go together. There are some rules of thumb you can apply. There are some that you can break, and I'll show you how to do that. With textures and patterns, you've got to be careful what you combine, because it can really look very, very busy, and that may be your look. But if you are looking for elegant, classy, and designed, then these are some of the rules you should follow. Here I've got stripes and stripes. Now the wood tones do not match, and that's a problem in The Sims, is we can seldom find wood tones and colors to actually match. But if you look just at the general stripes, it doesn't look, even though these don't match, it doesn't look like it's out of place. It looks like somebody could possibly have put these together. While I'm on these stripes and things, look at what you can do using the same wallpaper, but merely applying different swatches. It gives you a completely different wallpaper. You could do it perfectly symmetrical, so 1 1 1 1, or 1 and then 2 and then 2 and then 1, and create actual patterns. So you can actually create something that looks unique. That's the standard wallpaper, and there's one that you have created from different wallpapers. You can do the same thing from these wild wallpapers. There are quite a few of them, and they come in a lot of different shades. Not one of these panels is the same color, so it gives you a mural. So you can literally create something quite new, quite unique. The same here. This is another very bright. And in fact, I got the idea because I used one of these in the back of the teal and the orange interior. So think outside the box. Think of how you could put wallpapers together. But let's not get distracted. So let's look at some patterns. Now, with patterns, it's best not to mix too many different types of patterns, because it starts looking very busy. So what I suggest you do is, if you find a pattern that you want to use on a feature wall, select something that you like first. In this case, I love these forest wallpapers. But what you would do is then use the same color in the background, for example, or the foreground, and use that as the rest of the room. You can, of course, use any color you like, but this is just to show you how you can get different wallpapers to blend. So white and the white of the background sort of go together. If you use the nib, you can actually, box in these details so that it actually looks like it's butting up against a wall. What you don't want to do, for example, is merge this kind of pattern and that kind of pattern. You can if you like, but this is not something I would advise. It's just too busy. Instead, you can use these sort of very simplistic, very modern lines of the tiles with this very busy, almost paisley, well, it's not paisley, but sort of classical patterns. And that you can create different patterns, or lack of a pattern on that, and a very busy classical pattern, and they work quite well. And you can use similar colors, contrasting colors. It doesn't matter, because this little nib here has no actual pattern. It's just stone, so it doesn't really compete with that one. This is kind of what you shouldn't. This is kind of what you wouldn't want to do. Okay, this is very, very garish. Even though you've got a consistency of color, one rule that you can apply to when you're mixing and matching is to always keep one thing the same. So here, for example, we've got the same sort of reddish color. Well, that's a slight deviation, but for purposes of illustration, we have got, we should actually just change the color on that. We have they're all warm colors. So we have got a continuous flow of color, but a lot of different patterns. That can work, but I'll show you next. This, for me, does not work. Similarly, neither do these, because if the game would just cooperate, these are similar color but different patterns. But it's just too haphazard. It doesn't really go very well. So none of this really goes well together. It just looks like it's being just slapped together. So now, what if you place wood next to it? Now start looking at how that looks. Okay, you have got a really stylized look. You've got two patterns. The wood has an almost indiscernible pattern. You have the reds and then the very sort of neutrals. Okay, so that works quite well. You've created panels with the patterns and the wood. Now how? Now, just like I've applied this here haphazardly. Now look if you apply it in a pattern. So here we've kept exactly the same color, which is gray. Okay, and we've got this lovely gray, which is continuous, flows through, but we created a pattern out of two separate patterns. I wouldn't use this necessarily in my house, but it does work. As opposed to sort of just slapping things together here, it doesn't. Then we can also look at, again, like we introduced wood there, we've got a similar color. It's like a grayish color, slightly different texture because of the wood here. You can actually see the wood grain. But again, look at how it works. They actually work well together because they're monochromatic. There's no actual vibrant color here. There are some slightly different textures, but they blend. You can also look at completely different textures like stone and wood. I find stone and wood work very, very well together. Wood and steel also works very, very well together. Okay, there's just, again, it's a very complementary sort of color. It's not complementary as in opposites, but the colors complement each other. They're very neutral, they don't compete, and you've got two different textures. You also combine two different colors and two different textures like this, if you really wanted to, but you create a very strict dividing line. Here you've got two different colors, two different textures, but they are still within a similar kind of palette. You don't have a bright red and a bright something else that aren't complementary. With stone, you can combine it with wood, as I've said before. To frame it, what often works well is to create these jut out boxes, and that gives you a good division. These columns that I've used here help you to divide different textures in different ways. On this side, going back to that panel that I originally had, here you see how I've used the columns to simply edge off wallpapers because the skirting is blue. So you could technically do this. And I've lost the column. There we go. So now if you frame it, it almost looks like it's deliberate. You have almost like a doorway. So you've framed that panel in. So that's how you can use columns to divide textures. Now let's look at floor patterns, but that more how you use textures. Again, remember I used the wood and the stone on the walls. Well, here I did a similar thing. Remember with floors, you can rotate the texture, and you can also use, I'll show you, you can also use, if you press Control F, you get the little triangle. Now you see, if I start putting it in here, you can create patterns with it, and you can again rotate it. You can rotate it and use it somewhere else. Oh, and our key. There we go. See, if you rotate it, you can create patterns again. This just gives you an endless amount. Let's don't do that. it gives you an endless amount of variations on theme. So look how well the wood, it looks like you've got wood planks surrounding a bit of stonework. It looks deliberate. If you look here, you've got two very sort of rough textures. You've got the tiles, and look how the sort of wood dips in there like it's worn. Look how it butts up neatly. If you choose textures correctly, textures that actually end on the tile edge, you can put them together to make it look like a sidewalk maybe and a dance floor or something like that. Look how well they work together, especially when you zoom in. So that's important to choose textures that you can use together. It takes a bit of time and practice. Again, notice that I'm using similar colors. The textures are different, but the colors are in the same palette. Here, I'm using very wildly different patterns of metal, but similar colors. If you also notice, I have used a variation on the floor tile in different shades. So you've got, in this particular one, if I recall, you've got two grays and then like a rusty color. So it's all gray. It's all steel. But it creates a panel. You can also create parquet out of parquet and planks. And look what happened here. It's all the same color, quite a bit of texture, but it's all monochromatic. And remember that you can always rotate these. So if you rotate, you can create something that is even more checkerboard. So always keep that in mind when you're doing floors, how you can create something unique. Now here I've used two different steel sort of sheeting on the floor. Now if you look, this part here is one type, and the next one is a different type. But when you use them together, they almost look like it's designed that way. Here I've also picked up the texture, I've rotated it, and then used the little diamond shaped quarter tile things to create patterns. You see, as you start putting them down, look at the patterns you can create. And that's what you can do to create completely unique floors. This is how you can use texture and patterns to create entirely new combinations, and they will be unique. Well, if somebody copies them, of course, but it will be unique to the game because this doesn't exist in the game as an actual thing. So I hope that helps you to choose patterns with the same pattern with the same pattern. If you wanted to use, for example, geometrics, so you chose a pattern that had circles and squares and, say, diamond shapes, then keep the same color. Where possible, keep exactly the same color, or at least a similar shade, and put them together. Right, this is the third and final part of the tutorial. It's the spatial relationship between objects and the environment. A lot of you battle with designing larger spaces. When we have small spaces, it's easy to sort of fit in the typical furniture layout that we'd all come to expect. As the rooms grow, then some of you battle to fill those rooms. And therein is the secret. Don't fill the room. Simply expand the same design or layout to fit that environment. So it doesn't look forced. It doesn't look cluttered. It just looks like it was designed to fit that space. There are a set of 3 rooms in increasing size. One is a very small, modest room. The second one is a little bit larger. And the third one is very grandiose. And this shows you how you can take the same furniture and use it in these different environments so that they look well designed and not just cluttered or slapped in. So here is the first room. It is very modest in scale. This is kind of what we are used to in real life and also in designing in The Sims, because we can relate to this kind of scale. The furniture is all pushed up against the wall, so we've got a maximum amount of circulatory space. Tables, plants, things are pushed into the corners. We have sort of modest artwork, so it's not overwhelming and doesn't sort of take up the entire room. simple bookcase, and that's your typical small layout. Now, most people will not have a problem putting this together, especially after the color science part of this tutorial. But now, what if we go up just slightly bigger? Now we have more space. But it's still not a huge room, it's not giant. So what I've done is, if you really look at the two together, they look very, very similar in layout. That's because they are. If you notice, what I've done is I've pushed the furniture a little bit further away from the walls. So instead of it being squished against the walls, you have a little bit of breathing room. It's what they call white space. The plants are no longer against the wall. That's more sort of central. The bookcase is also a little bit more, it's got a little bit more room around it. Again, that's not complicated. Most people can put this together, and it looks quite nice. If you look at it as a room, it's quite snug. It's not too tight, and I wouldn't mind a lounge, with these kind of portions. So that's like a medium room. But now, what happens when you get to a grandiose design? You end up with these huge amount of spaces that people feel like they have to fill. But you don't have to fill it, and that's what I wanted to show with this. So in all the options, I've used the same furniture. Here, I've actually duplicated the couches. So I've got 2 couches as opposed to 1. I've moved everything further. This is also a bigger fireplace. I have moved everything further away from the fireplace. I've moved those little tables and plants sort of closer by, so it kind of frames the fireplace. But this is almost the same design. It's just rotated, because now we have more room this way as opposed to that way. And I've added an extra couch. With the open space, you can just simply put art, put a piano. In these big houses, I love piano. I love piano music. I used to play. I don't play anymore. And so I love seeing pianos in a house. So if you're going to have a grandiose house like this, put in a piano, put in something that is not usually in modest houses, because let's face it, this is the scale of this house. On the other side, you could just put a reading nook, for example, just a nice, comfortable chair to read, which we don't really have a lot of in The Sims, so this kind of does seem a little bit disjointed. You have just a reading chair, something to put your feet up on, a couple of magazines. Behind the couch, to help fill in the spaces, is basically a couch table, a couple of things on it. It fills up the space. It doesn't look cluttered. The chairs again placed to sort of encourage conversation, look out over the fire. Now in the central part, we only had 1 bookcase. I've now taken 3 bookcases and put them side by side. What I've also done using the Move Objects sheet is put it so it overlaps, so it looks like 1 continuous bookcase. So this makes the room visually divided, but still the room is 1 unit. So what you do with the rest of the space? Well, the one thing I have done here is I started creating patterns on the floor. This helps to shrink the room a little bit. So I've used like a tile. It's the same wooden floor in all the other rooms, but it has like a slate border to it. On the other side, I thought, well, why not put a dining room in this space? If you're going to have such a massive space, it's generally open plan living anyway. Look at the scale of the furniture. Unfortunately, we don't really have 1.5 tile wide tables, so we are stuck with long, narrow tables. For the main seating, I've used a very simple chair, and then something really oversized, throne like chairs for the head of the table. That gives it a much bigger stature. That's how you fill a space. Since we have all this space, and it is kind of a gallery kind of area, why not put a bar? Put in a bar. The Sims will use it. Look how you can use different things to create an effect. This is just an awning from you would put outside over the bottle display. Gives it an interesting look. Always look for how you can combine things in a new way. Be whimsical. This is a statue, a artwork from the islands, and I just stuck it in there. I thought it's got a similar color palette, kind of unusual texture, rock. with that tail fin. So that fills in that area. I didn't do much artwork in this room, but I did do the one. So what people tend to do is they don't know how to do artwork. They sort of start sticking lots and lots of stuff on. In a gallery-like space, this is like a gallery. This is a very large house. Keep it simple. Here, these are 3 different artworks, but when combined, they look like one long, continuous, broken up artwork. So it gives you continuity. Notice the colors going on from one to the other, and so monochrome, greens, blues. So that's how you can create artwork on a larger scale. Combine different things. And now if you look at it from the top, you see how I left a lot of white space around the areas. Rich people don't like to be crowded, so they want these big areas to walk around. So that's how you do it. That's how you fill a space without cluttering it. You could clutter it if you want, but this is how you scale up from this and this. It's the same furniture, so the scale is the same. Also, what you start doing in very large areas is you use very large pieces of furniture, like this very, very large 4-tile coffee table. So increase your furniture size. There are not a lot of options like chairs and things. That really would have been a bit larger, I feel, in scale. But this is the Sims, and these are the limitations. So from small to medium to grand. And that's how you make your objects relate to the environment they are in, with color, positioning, and different textures. Right, we've come to the end of the tutorial. I do hope that it helps you. And if you did enjoy this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. Do have a wonderful day ahead, and do come back soon.